Finish starters all day, king of hearts, we don't play. I will show no remorse if you bring the traitor my way. If you're crossing my land there, understand you ain't safe.
What's going on, nomads, party people, and strangers everywhere across the internet, and welcome back to Netflix Month, where we're going over, like we said in the beginning of the video, what happened to Monday. A Netflix original film that came out that, albeit is kind of askew for a lot of different reasons. But first, let's go over the 4-factor sheets of what makes up the Netflix review for Netflix Month of plot. Then, instead of doing the normal stuff from last review, we're going to be covering characters, themes, and then the finale. So, first off with the plot. Set into the not-so-distant future, where after climate change has happened, where the polar ice caps are gone, and then first food goes down, we're trying to think, how do we save the human race? We could try to look for sustainable food sources elsewhere through different pods that we could send onto the universe. But no! Let's just make very, very scientifically bred food with a lot of GMOs and whatnot. That will save the human populace. But then that breeds one more problem. Overpopulation. As we stand right now, overpopulation is one of the biggest concerns coming out from everyone, not only in America, not only in Britain, not only in Africa, but in all parts of the globe where humanity lives and can actually survive in. So, all of a sudden the thought process is, well, we could once again revisit the whole going into space thing, maybe start some colonies from the Elon Musk trips, or actually make outer space outposts so that we can divide up the populace of people that can do the first months of surviving on this planet to make sure it can be a livable habitat for us, then explore other reaches of the universe that have similar backgrounds to our planet Earth so that we can move people faster and make bigger trade routes so that we don't have a bunch of problems. But no, they decide to listen to this one country we all know that has many brilliant ideas. What was that country again? America, fuck yeah! Yeah, that one. So then they decide to announce that, yo, we got us an idea. A child allocation act where you can only have one child if you had 2 or more kids come out of your wife's vagina, or your girlfriend's vagina, or just your vagina in general if you had a sperm donor baby, or that of a surrogate child of the like. Because of course, that's how you solve the population thing of you take away the children and then for some odd reason add the whole cryogenic, eluded but still cryogenic actions to the mix to then just be like, yeah, we're gonna do this thing because that's the smart option. Totally worth having a bunch of people then have a revolution if stuff goes wrong instead of actually spreading out from not only our planet but to other corners of the universe. I mean, I'm just saying there's a lot of smart things they could have done here. But no, because of this, we then fast forward several years later to where we have our titular characters coming into fruition from Willem Dafoe having, apparently in his character's monologue, having 7 granddaughters that he decides to name after days of the week, Monday all the way to Sunday. And thus our plot begins with 7 children that have been raised throughout the whole child allocation thing that, surprise, are all identical sisters that can live life for just one day in freedom while the others hide in secret. Yeah, I see nothing wrong going there. That is, wow. But surely, from a plot like this, we have a giant ensemble of characters that can truly sell this product for what it is. Well, let's go over it. First, let's have all of the septuplets being counted off, all being played by the same actress of Noomi Rapace. While it is kind of a stretch to just have all of these thinly characterized characters in a sort of spiel that would work better in a TV series than in a movie because it's so condensed that you have no real feel for what the characters are unless you have to watch the film multiple times to know the characteristics of each sister. It's kind of bland to just see how the characters are supposed to interact, unlike on something of the same scale of Orphan Black, which as a TV show flushed out all of the clones as real characters. But aside from that, and how Clara Reed tried to portray them when they were little girls in flashback sequences, what about other characters? Well, we had Glenn Close as one of the antagonists of the feature. I'll give you guys a hint about how that went. It's kind of like if Cruella de Vil came out, became fully sane, and then thought, hey, wait, I'm full of money. People have to listen to what I say. So you know what? I'm going to take several notes out of both Hitler and Kim Jong-un's whole thing of how to fuck up people's lives, and then do so on an even grander scale than kidnapping puppies. 'Cause that's smart. Seriously, that's all just... Why derail such an interesting premise of a character for just such literal war that we'll be going into later on? Honestly, the only highlights of this whole movie were the small moments with Willem Dafoe back in his human makeup. We all know you're secretly a death god, you creepy asshole. And this one standalone guy that only did poetry readings every now and again to be a likable character in the small scenes that we saw him of a character named Eddie, played by an actor who, and I'm sorry if I botched up the name of, Tomiwa Edun. Because all the other characters I could list off just don't really hit the marks like they're supposed to. The love interest, a douchebag co-worker, several extras, hell, even stuff of just antagonists that help the antagonist don't really have that much going for them, and they're supposed to help carry the story for this whole, we're trying to make the Allocation Act go super well for Cruella de Vil, Nicolette Kamen. Yeah, that's her name. She totally did not change her name when she went to jail and then to a psych ward. Because that's totally her name, guys. That's totally her name. It's starting to go downhill, you're probably wondering. But hold on. We gotta go into the central themes of this film. And those themes are kind of what made this film a lot more interesting than it deserves, if I'm being honest. The first one is of identity, with the lead character supposed to be septuplets that have been raised to not only live the singular life underneath a very strong-armed regime of you cannot have a sibling because there's only supposed to be room for one in this world if all of you were born. Identity is a hard thing when you're trying to live a double life in secrecy because no one knows you for you. Nobody can see your true characteristics, your flaws, your good points. You cannot fall in love. A lot of different factors come into play that make everything about who you are a daily grind of, can I live this way, or am I going to lose everything because I'm not allowed to be myself? Another thing about this is sacrifice, as well as how far will you go for your loved ones, which we'll get into in the finale. So I won't spoil what the sacrifice thing is right now. But the third one I'm going to point out, although it's sort of spoilery, it's also not, is the common factor trope of power corrupting absolute. I don't need to go down an entire memory lane lecture with you guys about what the concept of power corrupts absolute does. We all know what the trope is from every single film that we've seen or video games that we've played or any sort of media like that. We all know that if you have a position of power, unless you have a really strong will or the character arc for yourself really lends to you being a strong enough leader without the writer saying, hey, we need an antagonist. Let's take one of our likable characters and just make them fuck up the whole formula. It corrupts absolutely to make you an impossible person to deal with that will do a lot of corrupt things because in your mind you feel that you're just. Which happens a lot more in films that has become so tiresome that it really has depreciated in value for the longest time, and that's the sad thing. It's a good trope that can do wonders if done correctly, but in a situation like this, it's like, why. So now let us proceed with the finale. So, for all intents and purposes of you guys probably sitting through the whole film, you're probably just wondering, how in the world are these septuplets going to have a huge problem in this film to begin with? The finale tries to wrap it up with a neat little bow, but it crumbles really quickly. See, the entire actions behind the plot and the drama and all these sort of issues is because the firstborn, which is Monday, aka Monday Sutman, Setman? Is it Setman? It's Setman. Monday Setman all of a sudden making a deal with Cruella de Vil. And because of this deal that she's making, she's also selling out her 6 siblings because, as a huge plot twist, she's having kids. Not a child, kids. And because of this whole panic factor, because of all these things going askew, because of not only her own actions with a love interest that I'm completely ignoring because he's very superfluous from this whole plot, we have to deal with seeing a lot of the Setman's sisters be killed off in such a mundanely grossed out way and mannerisms that try to make it seem like our deaths were supposed to be justified for character arcs for one of the sisters of Thursday that set this whole thing of sacrifice up to begin with. So now our whole thing was just a contrived plot device of why we exist. And because of this, it allowed so many sad factors to happen to occur where not only did one of the sisters, by the name of Thursday, by the way, uncovered what happened with the real child allocation act of they actually take the siblings, put them in a chamber, and then incinerate their bodies after putting them to sleep. Where we find out the government that people have been paying for are literally taking children and murdering them instead of just allowing them to be with their families and look for a smarter solution to the overpopulation crisis.
I'm the government, I'm the government, I'm the reason nothing works.
I digress on that point. From this action alone, Caveman, aka Cruella de Vil, aka Glenn Close, gets thrown out of her position and is put on trial for all of her actions of child murder, lying to the public at large, and the Child Allocation Act crumbles, but with Monday Setman dying after making sure that her babies from her uterus are taken out to then be processed and then born in a scientific lab so that the two remaining siblings throughout the whole film of Tuesday and Thursday can live on while Tuesday raises them and Thursday just carries on the name of their mother that they've been carrying on through the rest of the film of Karen Setman from the beginning to the end of the plot lines. However, you're probably wondering, but V, what about the thing about sacrifice? Well, allow me to dive into what I mean with this finale. See, the early pitfalls about how the sacrifice motif began was from a flashback where Thursday, trying to rebel against the family of the Child Allocation Act of sneaking out when one of her siblings was going to a ballet recital. Long story short, it was stupid, it was pointless. I have no idea why they just had this scene instead of making this a TV show, but I will go into that in a different rant video. I digress. Where afterwards she gets injured and is about to lose a finger. And because their grandfather doesn't want them to be caught by anyone that's running the Child Allocation Act in the government, he decides to cut off parts of each of the children's fingers so that they can blend in with society. But later on in a follow-up flashback, we see that he's sobbing because not only did he have to do it to his granddaughters / people that he's legally responsible for as their guardian since their mother died, but because he's doing this to protect them so that they can have a chance to live. From this whole flashback sequence of events to lead into the finale, it's been embedded into the mind of the firstborn Monday because she feels like since her grandfather wanted to do so much for her and her siblings that she had to do that same sacrifice for her children, even if it meant losing her sisters, even having to push them aside and make it seem like she hated them, when in all actuality she wanted them to be around, but everything went askew from her plans of trying to have what she could as her mother's name to carry on to just have the life that she always wanted, but now that there's children involved, she had to make a split-second decision that affected everyone's lives. That motif of sacrifice would have been very powerful, would have been very eloquently executed to a nice little T, but once again, as the main problem, this was not supposed to be something that I personally view as a movie. The premise alone for What Happened to Monday makes for a better TV show, which would have rivaled Orphan Black as a very in-depth series about what to do in a dystopian type settings of these look-alike characters in this world that can do so many things with a noir mystery to overlap through all of the occurrences. You can do many different qualities with this story. Many people can prove that with a snap of the finger. It's not that hard to make a story from this and make it good. But to make it into a movie means sacrificing character motivations, character arcs, fleshing out who the people are, why we should give a damn. Because condensing it like this really undervalues what any sort of factor you're looking for in any of these people are. I was sitting through the whole film trying to love them through the multiple watch-throughs, trying to identify who they are instead of through expositions and through, oh yeah, see these photos that are just briefly shown on screen because we only had so little time? This is our beautiful montage of our greatest moments as a family. So you should care because that's the emotional value. And it's not. It's contrived nonsense that just makes it a weaker plotline from something that is actually interesting. A film about overpopulation and then having characters try to take down that structure by living day by day in secrecy to maybe overthrow the government, that would have been a great television show or a great series of films to follow through on. But instead, it was condensed to this that makes it suffer the most. And that's the biggest flaw with this film. I want to love What Happened to Monday. I want to love how it tried to set itself up for all of these different plot threads and themes and trying to explore a new venue in the dystopian genre. But it's just so muddled. So from just the whole rating scale that I could give this whole film, I want to actually give this a 6.2 out of 13 with a C- and just giving it a 3 out of 7 star rating. I really want to give this a higher rating, like I keep saying, over what promising potential this has, but it's so boring. If you guys want an alternate recommendation for this, like I've been saying off and on the video, check out Orphan Black. It's an amazing series. You can get all the DVDs everywhere that you want to watch it, and it's a better interpretation about what clones or sisters in a very janky society can do for one another to survive if the chips are down, instead of this sorry waste of potential right here. But speaking of stuff that people have been criticizing, I'm changing up the formula for the next review that might piss off a bunch of people. I'm kind of excited.
You crazy mother.